If one day the last person who still says your name isn't your child, but a nurse checking your blood pressure before rushing out the door, would you still believe your life was worth living? Hello, everyone. I'm Pat Sajak, and welcome back to Kitchen Table Talks, the place where we sit around a familiar kitchen table, real or imaginary, and share stories that make us smile or break our hearts. If you love true stories about family, compassion, forgiveness, and the things we all feel but don't always say out loud, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. Your support helps us keep bringing you stories that touch the soul. Tonight's letter begins with one haunting line. I met her in a room where the window was always half open, as if her life itself was only allowed to open halfway. The title of tonight's story is Forgotten in a Nursing Home Until a Stranger Saved Her Story. Now, let's begin. Dear Kitchen Table Talks, and to anyone who has ever feared growing old alone, my name is Daniel Harper. I'm 37 years old, living in a small town called Maplewood, Ohio. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a therapist, I'm not a volunteer saint. I'm just a delivery driver-owned guy driving an old white van, dropping off packages to houses, offices, hospitals, and yes, nursing homes. I've delivered everywhere. To mansions behind tall iron gates that rise higher than any poor man's pride, to cramped apartments filled with noise and arguments, and then to a place that gives me chills every time I park the van. Greenfield Rest Home. It sits at the very end of Willow Road, past an empty parking lot where even weeds don't bother to grow straight. I don't fear old people me grandmother raised me. She taught me how to tie my shoelaces, how to bake apple pie, and how to say I'm fine even when you feel anything but fine. She passed away when I was 19. Since then, every silver head and every wrinkled hand reminds me of love and loss. But Greenfield is different. Even its silence has a smell disinfectant, cold leftovers, and the quiet odor of stories that never got to finish themselves. I met Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore on a damp Tuesday afternoon. Maplewood was just stepping into early autumn. Leaves turned orange, red, yellow except the lawn outside Greenfield, which looked abandoned long enough for the seasons to forget it. I was delivering a small package. Adult diapers, lotions, one cheap box of chocolates. The shipping label said, recipient, room Hai Chumwee Hai. No specific name, no specific name. I still remember the typed letters. They stopped me for a second. A whole life lived, and then reduced to no specific name. The nurse on duty, Laura, took the box from my hands and shrugged. It's shared supplies, she said. Some residents just don't get individual deliveries. You can leave it here. I don't know why my eyes slid to the clipboard pinned beside her desk. A printed room list. Some names crossed out, some replaced, some with notes. Transferred, deceased, family picked up belongings. At the bottom I saw, room Hai Chumwee Hai, Eleanor Whitmore, no visitors in some months. I don't know why that line hit me. Maybe because I'd just gone through a breakup. Maybe because my best friend was moving out of state. Maybe because those two word snow visitors felt close to a fear I didn't dare speak out loud. Maybe because at that moment in life, even I felt like something left too long on a shelf. Where's room, Hai Chumwee Hai? I asked. Laura raised an eyebrow, cautious like I was someone trying to sell life insurance to someone with very little life left. End of the hallway, left turn. But you can't well if you're just dropping it off. I guess it's fine. Just knock first. I carried the box down the long hallway. The floor tiles were faded. The framed pictures on the wallflowers, beaches, meadows felt like reminders of places the residents would never see again. I stopped at room Hai Chumwee Hai. The door was slightly open. Inside, a TV murmured at the lowest volume, like someone whispering from behind a thin veil of time. I knocked gently. Hello, delivery service. I have a few items for this room. Silence. Only the soft hum of a cholesterol medication commercial. I pushed the door open another inch, and that's when I saw her. Small, frail, wearing a pale blue sweater that looked too big for her thinning shoulders. Her white hair was tied in a loose bun, strands falling like memories she no longer had energy to tuck away. She wasn't watching the TV. She was staring out the window. The window faced the empty parking lot. Except for my van, there was nothing and no one. But she stared with a kind of hope, as if that emptiness might suddenly grow into a promise, into a car she recognized. into a familiar face. "Hello," I said softly. "I'm Daniel. I have some supplies for you." She flinched, then turned. Her eyes were gray, like a sky holding back tears it had grown too tired to release. "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you come in." She lifted a hand to her ear. "You said your name was?" "Daniel, ma'am, from Maple Express. I have a shipment for the room." She glanced at the box with a quick, almost embarrassed nod. Then she asked a question that carved its way into me. "Are you sure you're in the right room? People don't usually remember this room exists." I smiled, thinking she was joking, but then I looked around. No photos, no cards, no drawings from grandchildren. Just a faded Bible, a pair of reading glasses, and an old alarm clock frozen at bone, Muribai. "No," I said gently, "I'm not mistaken. This delivery is for Room High Chumway High. It doesn't list a name, but I figured you might need these." She gave a dry, crumpled paper kind of smile. "No name. That sounds about right. Sometimes people forget the names of those they've left behind." I couldn't respond. The silence in that room was heavier than the box I carried. "May I ask?" I said quietly, "Are you Mrs. Eleanor?" She looked surprised, then nodded. "Yes, Eleanor Whitmore. I'm amazed that old name of mine is still on any list." I remembered the clipboard. No visitors in sow months. I opened my mouth to say something anything, but she turned her gaze back to the window. "As you can see," she whispered, "it's been a while since anyone parked here for me." I stood there, still holding the cardboard box, but it felt like something inside my chest had slipped loose and fallen to the floor. There are moments in life when you know instant that you weren't meant to be somewhere, yet you were brought there for a reason. Right place, right time, right second. That was one of those moments. Maybe Eleanor sensed my silence, or maybe she had lived with silence so long that she recognized its shape. She turned toward me, lips trembling as if forcing themselves to form a smile. "You don't have to stand there apologizing for the whole world," she whispered. "I'm used to this." I set the box down beside her small table and bent slightly. The ceiling felt lower in her room than anywhere else in the building. Age had settled onto everything, the furniture, the air, even the faint hum of the lights. It was as if the room had been aging with her, day by day, wrinkle by wrinkle. My eyes landed again on the old clock frozen at bone, Mumbai. She noticed. "It broke a long time ago," she said quietly, "but I've never wanted to replace it. At least it keeps the last hour I remember clearly." "Why bone, Mumbai?" I asked. She stared at her hands thin, pale, mapped with years. That was the exact minute I last heard my husband laugh. I didn't expect an answer like that. It hit me so sharply that I forgot to breathe. She continued, her voice steady but colored with something deep, something buried under years of dust. "He passed away 7 years ago, peacefully, in his favorite armchair in our living room. I looked at the clock, and later when I came here, the batteries died. I meant to change them, but then I thought, if it stays still, then that moment stays with me." I didn't interrupt. "Some stories don't need replies, they need room. How long have you lived here?" I finally asked. She pressed her lips together, searching her memory like it was a drawer she rarely opened. "I came 2 years after he died. My daughter Anna said I needed proper care, that the house was too big, that living alone wasn't safe." She looked at me, eyes darkening, and I believed her. Then she paused long enough for me to feel dread crawl up my spine. "What I didn't know," she added, "is that she never planned to bring me back home, ever." It was a small sentence, but it shattered like glass between us. She continued, "The first weeks, I had hope. I sat by that window every afternoon waiting for her car, waiting for a call, waiting for anything. The first 3 months she visited a handful of times. Then the visits got shorter, then fewer, then nothing." "Do you talk to her now?" I asked softly. She shook her head. 6 months. Not a call, not a card, not even a text. Her voice dropped. "The only thing she remembers is the bill this place sends, and she stopped paying that last month." A heavy ache formed inside my throat. "What will the nursing home do?" I asked. "They feed me, they give me my medication, but I know one day they'll transfer me to the ward for residents without family support." She attempted a pathetic smile. "A smaller room. A smaller window. Her eyes glistened. If you're forgotten, every room feels the same anyway. I sat down on the plastic chair next to her bed. My voice came out gentler than I expected. Mrs. Eleanor, if you don't mind, may I sit with you for a while? She blinked, surprised. You're not busy? I am, I admitted, but some things are worth being late for. She looked at me, really looked at me. Then her eyes softened, almost breaking. I can't remember the last time anyone said something like that to me. We sat quietly for a while, listening to a TV commercial about vitamins for seniors. Something shifted in the air. The room felt warmer, less like a waiting room for forgotten lives, more like someplace human again. She wasn't someone waiting to die. She was someone waiting to be seen. I took a breath. Have you ever thought about leaving this place? Going back home? She let out a bitter laugh. Daniel, my house was sold. I froze. Anna sold it? She nodded slowly. She said it was to secure my future, but really, she needed the money. Then she told me the nursing home was best for me. My next question came with a twinge of anger I didn't expect. And did you agree to that? At first, yes. Then she looked away. After that, I wasn't given the chance to disagree anymore. The way she said it made my skin prickle, as if she had been placed here for someone else's convenience, not her comfort. Do you want me to help you? I asked. Reach out to someone? A relative? A friend? Maybe call your daughter? She kept her gaze fixed on the window. Her voice was barely audible. Daniel, if you call her, she won't come. She swallowed hard, then turned to me with eyes full of cracks. What hurts is not that she won't come. What hurts is knowing she no longer remembers that I exist. My chest tightened like someone had gripped it with both hands. In that moment, for reasons I still can't fully explain, I felt an overwhelming urge to do anything to save this woman from disappearing without anyone noticing, to pull her out of a shadow she didn't deserve. I asked, have you ever told your story to anyone? No, she whispered. I have no one left to tell it to. I leaned forward. If you'd like, you can tell it to me. She stared at me, searching for something. Maybe trust, maybe permission. Then, slowly, she nodded, as if unlocking a door that had been shut for years. All right, she said. But Daniel, yes, will you remember my name? I looked straight into her eyes. I will. She inhaled shakily, then let me begin. She drew in a long, trembling breath, the kind people take when they stand at the edge of a memory that still hurts to touch. Then she folded her hands in her lap, almost as if preparing for confession. I was born in Motngin, Jinchambonmibon, she began softly, in a little farmhouse outside Dayton. We weren't rich, but we had enough. My mother was a school teacher. My father fixed tractors for the neighbors. It was the kind of childhood where the biggest danger was stepping on a rusty nail, and the greatest joy was catching fireflies on summer nights. Her eyes glazed slightly, drifting somewhere far from room Hai Chumway High. I met my husband Robert at a church picnic when I was 21. He spilled lemonade on my dress and then apologized so many times I thought he might faint. I married him a year later. It wasn't a perfect marriage, but it was a good one, a gentle one. She smiled. A small, fragile smile like a candle flickering in wind. We had one daughter, Anna. She was everything. She had Robert's eyes and my hair. She liked coloring outside the lines and eating pancakes for dinner. She used to sleep curled next to me like a tiny, warm question mark. Something in her face tightened. Robert adored her. He used to say, God only gave us one child because he knew we'd never have room in our hearts for another. I swallowed. The way she said it present tense, then past tense, made it clear how much she still loved them both. And Anna grew up? I asked gently. She did, Eleanor nodded. Too fast. Faster than I realized. She became quieter in high school, always in her room, always upset about something. I tried to reach her, but motherhood doesn't always come with instructions. She twisted her fingers together. When she was 17, we had a terrible fight. I don't even remember what it was about any more curfew or a boy or something silly, but I remember the way she looked at me that night, like I was the enemy, like she'd been waiting for a reason to hate me. Her voice cracked. I thought time would fix it, but sometimes time only deepens the cracks. I didn't interrupt. I knew if I spoke, she might lose the courage to continue. When Robert got sick, everything got worse. Anna blamed me for not noticing the symptoms earlier. She blamed me for choosing the wrong doctor. She blamed me for everything. Eleanor paused. And when he died, she treated me like the last thread tying her to a life she wanted to forget. She wiped the corner of her eye with her sleeve. 2 years after the funeral, she came to my house. She told me I wasn't safe living alone. She said she worried. She said she loved me. She said the nursing home would give me proper care. A bitter laugh escaped her throat. She had already found a buyer for my house. I clenched my jaw. I had heard of situations like this, but hearing it from her lips felt different. It felt crueler. There were papers, she continued, forms, signatures, promises, and I thought she was finally trying to connect with me again. I thought she cared. Did she? I asked. Eleanor looked down. She cared about the money. The room seemed to shrink for a moment. After the sale, she went on. She packed my things. Not carefully, not lovingly, just quickly, efficiently. She put me in her car, drove me here, kissed my cheek at the door, and said, "Mom, this is temporary. I'll come visit every week." Her breath hitched. For the first few months, she did come, each visit shorter than the one before. Then she started canceling. Busy day at work. Traffic is bad. I'm traveling. And eventually nothing at all. She leaned back against her pillow, exhausted from the weight of her own memories. "You know what's strange, Daniel?" she whispered. The first year I kept making excuses for her. I thought, she's stressed. She's young. She needs time. Then one day I realized something. She met my eyes. No one forgets someone they love. They forget people they no longer need. A lump formed in my throat. Every afternoon, she said, I sat by that window, watching the parking lot, hoping her car would turn the corner. Even if she just waved at me from outside, that would have been enough. She paused, but she never came. A long silence settled between us. Not the cold, sterile silence of most nursing homes, but the heavy human silence of two people, sitting with a truth too painful to name. I found myself saying quietly, "You didn't deserve that." Her eyes glistened, and she whispered, "I know." But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. She looked around the room at the bare walls, the empty bedside table. This place, it isn't bad. The nurses are kind. They try. But it's not a home. You know what makes a home, Daniel? I shook my head gently. She answered, "A home is where somebody would notice if you disappeared." Her words hit me like a blow. She wasn't asking to be loved. She wasn't asking for miracles. She just wanted to be noticed. "I'm sorry," I murmured. She smiled the saddest smile I had ever seen. "Don't be. You're here, aren't you? That's more than I've had in months." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. Then her voice lowered to almost a whisper. "Daniel, can I tell you the worst part?" I nodded. The loneliest moment of my life wasn't when Anna stopped visiting. She paused, steadying her breath. It was the day I realized that if she walked into this room right now, I wouldn't even know what to say to her anymore. A tear rolled down her cheek. I wouldn't know how to be her mother. I reached over and gently placed my hand on top of hers. Her fingers were cold. She didn't pull away. "You're still someone's mother," I said, "and your story matters." She closed her eyes. "No one ever says that to me." Well, I whispered, "I'm saying it now." For the first time since I'd met her, her shoulders relaxed, like she finally allowed herself to exhale after holding her breath for years. And then she said, "Daniel, there's something else, something I've never told anyone. It's the real reason Anna left me." She opened her eyes. "Please, promise you won't judge me." "I promise," I said. She gripped my hand. "Then let me tell you what really happened." She held my hand so tightly I could feel every bone in her fingers, every tremor running through her skin. Her grip wasn't strong because she was physically strong. It was strong because she was afraid. Afraid of the things she was about to say. Afraid of finally opening a door she had kept locked for decades. "Daniel," she whispered, "Anna didn't leave because she stopped loving me. She left because she blamed me for something I never forgave myself for." I kept my voice soft. "What was it?" Her breath shuddered. "I was not a perfect mother." "No one is," I wanted to say. But I didn't, because she wasn't confessing something small. I could see that in her eyes. She stared down at her hands again, the way someone stares at the hands that have made mistakes they can't undo. When Anna was young, 10, 11 years old, I was overwhelmed. Robert worked long hours. I was dealing with my father's illness. I was juggling everything, and I wasn't patient. Her voice dropped to a trembling whisper. I was strict, too angry. I snapped at her over little things. Sometimes I yelled. Sometimes I said things I wish I could erase. She closed her eyes, as if bracing herself against memories that hit like waves. I never hit her, she said quickly, looking up in panic, pleading with me to believe. I never did that. But words can bruise, Daniel. Words can bruise deeper than hands. I nodded slowly, letting her know I wasn't judging. Not yet. Not ever. She was just a child, Eleanor said. And I expected her to act like a grown-up. I expected her to understand things she couldn't. I expected her to carry burdens that weren't hers. A tear slipped down her cheek. One night, she spilled a bowl of soup on the kitchen floor. And Daniel, I yelled at her so much she cried herself to sleep on the stairs. I heard her sobbing. I heard her whisper, "Why is Mom so mad at me?" Her voice cracked. But I didn't go to her. I was too proud, too angry at everything else in my life. I left my own daughter crying alone. The shame pooled in her eyes like a storm cloud she had carried too long. The next morning, she continued, she avoided me. She became quiet, distant. I could tell she was afraid of making me angry. She'd flinch when I raised my voice, even if I wasn't talking to her. She squeezed my hand desperately. I didn't mean to be cruel, Daniel. I was tired, broken, but she didn't know that. She just knew her mother wasn't gentle. I whispered, "Many mothers have moments like that. It doesn't make you a monster." But she shook her head. The problem isn't the mistakes we make when they're young. It's the fact that sometimes they never truly forget. She looked back at the frozen clock still at Bone Murray Bay, as if the answer to everything was hidden inside its unmoving hands. Years later, she said, we argued again. She was in high school. She wanted to go to a party I didn't approve of. I said no. She screamed that she hated me. And I screamed back. Her voice trembled. I told her that if she kept acting like that, she would ruin her life. I told her she was selfish, irresponsible. I said things I didn't mean, but she remembered every word. A painful silence filled the room. When Robert got sick, she continued, Anna and I stopped talking for almost a year. She blamed me for everything. And when he died, it was like she flipped a switch inside her. She became cold, mechanical, efficient. She handled the funeral, the paperwork, everything. She didn't shed a tear. Eleanor wiped her wet cheek with the back of her hand. One night, I found her packing his things. I asked her why she wasn't crying. She swallowed hard. She said, I stopped crying for this family a long time ago. My chest tightened. That's when I realized, Eleanor whispered. She wasn't angry at me because of the decisions I made when she was an adult. She was angry because of the pain I caused her when she was a child. And she never told you that? I asked gently. She never needed to. Children don't forget the versions of us that scared them. I didn't speak. I let her continue. When she put me in here, Eleanor said she was polite, calm, almost professional. But before she left, she looked at me with the same eyes she had the night she slept on those stairs. Her voice quivered, and she said, Mom, this is what's best for both of us. She took a trembling breath. That's when I knew. She wasn't abandoning me out of cruelty. She was abandoning me out of self-protection. I felt something collapse inside me, something heavy and aching and deeply human. Her next words came out as a whisper. I broke my daughter long before she broke me. I shook my head instinctively. Eleanor, no. You made mistakes. You tried. You stayed. You loved her. That counts. But she wasn't listening. She was staring through me, or maybe through time, at something only she could see. I don't blame her, Eleanor said, for leaving me. She paused. What I blame myself for is giving her so many reasons to leave. I sat there, silent, aching for her. After a long moment, she turned to me with eyes that begged for a kind of understanding she had never been given. "That's why she sold the house," she whispered. "That's why she stopped visiting. That's why she forgot me." Then she asked the question that shattered me. "Daniel, do you think some wounds between mothers and daughters can ever heal, even when it's already too late?" I took a slow breath. She was asking me for truth, not comfort. And so I said, "I think sometimes one person has to take the first step, even when they're afraid the other person won't take one back." Eleanor looked at me, truly looked at me, and something flickered behind her eyes. Not hope, not yet, but the memory of what hope once felt like. "Then tell me, Daniel," she whispered, "what if I no longer have the strength to take that step?" She asked that question with a trembling so subtle, so fragile. It felt like the entire room held its breath with her. What if I no longer have the strength to take that step? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because some questions deserve silence, first a moment of respect, of understanding, of letting the truth settle before shaping it into words. I shifted slightly closer to her, careful not to startle her. "Eleanor," I said quietly, "strength doesn't always look like walking. Sometimes it looks like whispering, or writing, or allowing someone else to take a step with you." She blinked, confused. "You mean you?" I nodded. "Yes, me." She stared at me as if she was trying to understand why someone who owed her nothing would offer something so big. And in a way, I was asking myself the same question. Why was I here? Why did I feel so responsible for this woman whose life had never touched mine until today? But deep down, I knew the answer, because loneliness is universal. And because once you've seen someone drowning quietly, pretending to breathe, you can't walk away. "I don't want your pity," she whispered. "It's not pity," I said. "It's compassion. And compassion is what we owe each other as humans." A tear escaped the corner of her eye, not a dramatic tear, just one, the kind that carries years. "You're very kind, Daniel," she murmured. "No," I replied, "just paying attention." She smiled a tired but genuine smile, a smile worn out by decades of hoping and hurting. "I said earlier that I didn't have the strength to take the first step," she said softly. "But the truth is, I don't even know where that step would go. Maybe," I suggested, "it starts with telling your story." She nodded slowly, as if considering that this right now, with me, was the first step she hadn't been able to take in years. Then her voice softened into something almost childlike. "Daniel, may I tell you the part of the story I fear the most? The part I never dared say out loud?" "Of course," she inhaled, shaky. "My daughter didn't leave because of one fight, or one mistake, or even 1 year of tension." A long pause. "She left because she became ashamed of me." I shook my head instantly. "That can't be." But she held up a frail hand to stop me. "Yes, it is. I know my daughter. I know her heart. Anna, she is proud. She wants the world to see her as strong, successful, put together, and I reminded her of the parts of her childhood that she wanted to erase. Her voice thinned, almost disappearing. I reminded her of the mother she was afraid of, the mother who yelled, the mother who withdrew, the mother who wasn't gentle. She swallowed. And children, when they become adults, sometimes they choose distance over forgiveness. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They stayed fixed on the window, where the reflection of her own fragile body trembled in the glass. "I wasn't a monster," she whispered, almost defensively. "I fed her. I clothed her. I protected her. I loved her fiercely. But Daniela, I didn't always love her softly. And children remember softness more than they remember love." I felt those words like a cold wind across my spine. I had never heard motherhood described so painfully, so honestly. And when she put me here, Eleanor continued, I realized she wasn't being cruel. She was protecting herself, protecting the version of her life she wanted to believe in, a life without the shadow of the mother who scared her. I placed a hand gently on hers again. "You're not a shadow," I whispered. She gave a fragile laugh. "Aren't I? Look at me. I live in a room no one visits, with a clock that no longer moves. I am the leftover chapter of someone's life story, the chapter they skip." "No," I said firmly. You still matter. Your story matters. You matter. She closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she might cry again. But when she opened them, there was something different there, not quite hope, but the faint outline of it. Would you help me? She asked almost inaudibly. With what? Help me? Right to her. My breath caught. In a nursing home where silence was louder than voices, those words felt monumental. A letter? I asked. Yes, Eleanor whispered. One letter, just one, even if she never answers. I nodded slowly. I'll help you. Eleanor's lips quivered, then parted in the smallest, softest thank you I had ever heard. But before I could say anything else, she gripped my hand, tighter, urgent, trembling. Daniel, I must warn you, she said. Warn me? Her eyes filled with fear. If Anna reads my letter, it might not bring her back. A beat. It might push her further away. I answered gently, that's the risk of honesty. But honesty also builds bridges where silence destroys them. She looked at the window again, as if hoping something, a memory, a miracle would appear in that empty parking lot. Then she turned back to me. Will you stay with me while I tell you everything? Everything I need to put in that letter? Yes, I said without hesitation. I'm here. She exhaled shakily. Then, Daniel, let me begin with the part of my story I've never said out loud, the part that haunts me more than any mistake. She looked straight into my eyes, fragile but brave. It's about the night Anna decided she didn't need a mother anymore. She looked at me with an expression I had trouble naming. It wasn't fear, exactly. It wasn't regret alone. It was something heavier, the look of someone about to peel back the memory that hurt the most, the memory that shaped everything after. The night Anna decided she didn't need a mother anymore, she paused, steadying her voice. It was winter, January. Cold enough that the windows frosted from the inside. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink, she continued. Robert had been sick for months. He was wasting away in front of us. And I felt myself wasting in another way. I was tired, always tired, the kind of tired that makes you sharp-edged, her hands curled slightly into her blanket. That night I had cooked dinner, something simple, chicken soup. I burned it. It's funny how something so small can set off a whole avalanche. Her eyes drifted toward the window, as though she could still see that old night outside it. Anna came into the kitchen. She was 17, beautiful, strong-willed, hurt in ways neither of us understood then. She said she'd already eaten at a friend's house and didn't want soup. Eleanor swallowed, and I snapped. Her shoulders shook slightly, as if reliving the moment. I accused her of being ungrateful, of abandoning me while her father was dying. I told her she didn't care about this family anymore. I told her she was selfish, cruel. I said, her voice cracked, I said she was becoming the kind of person her father would be ashamed of. The words hung between us like shards of glass. Eleanor wiped her cheek with trembling fingers. She didn't yell back. She didn't fight. She didn't say one angry word. A beat. She just froze. I could picture it. A teenage girl standing still in the middle of a small kitchen, the smell of burned soup in the air, winter wind scratching the windows, a child who had already learned to stop crying where no one could see. She stared at me, Eleanor said, with these wide, wounded eyes, eyes I had seen before, eyes I had seen the night she spilled soup as a little girl. She let out a long, shaking breath, and then, very quietly, she said, Mom, I don't think I know how to love you without hurting. I felt something inside me twist, hard. That sentence, Eleanor whispered, was like hearing the door close on our entire relationship. What happened after? I asked, barely above a whisper. She went upstairs, packed a bag, called a friend, and left the house for the night. A long pause. She didn't come home until the morning. She didn't look at me when she walked in. And Robert? I asked gently. Was he there? He was in the living room. Too weak to get up, her mouth trembled. He heard everything. And when Anna left, he said, Eleanor, you have to stop breaking her heart just because yours is broken. A deep silence settled between us. I didn't respond, she whispered. I couldn't, because part of me knew he was right. She wiped another tear. That winter became the beginning of the end. for all of us. Robert got worse. Anna got colder. And I got quieter. Quieter than a mother should ever be. She looked up at me suddenly, the fear raw in her eyes. Do you see now, Daniel? Do you understand? Anna didn't leave because she didn't love me. She left because loving me hurt her. I shook my head. No child should have to carry that kind of pain. No mother should give it, she whispered. A moment passed, then another. Her breathing steadied, but her voice was still fragile. The reason she put me in here, Daniel, it wasn't punishment. It was escape. She wanted distance from the woman who reminded her of every scar she tried to hide. She looked down, and I can't even blame her for that. I took a slow breath. Eleanor, have you ever apologized to her? She flinched just slightly. No, she said softly. I tried once. I tried to say something during Robert's funeral, but my voice broke, and she walked away before I finished. And after that, I never got the chance. You mean you never gave yourself the chance? I said gently. She looked at me sharply, her eyes filling again. Do you think after all these years she'd want to hear it? I considered my words carefully. I think sometimes the apology isn't about whether they accept it. Sometimes it's about finally letting go of the guilt that's been strangling you. Her lips trembled. What if my apology only reminds her of the pain? What if I open wounds she desperately wants closed? Then at least you would be giving her the truth, I said. And truth is better than silence. Silence leaves ghosts. Truth sometimes gives peace. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, letting the words sink in. She stared at the ceiling for a long moment. You know, Daniel, for years I thought pain was something you bury, something you don't speak about. But maybe pain is like those old boxes in the attic, the ones we avoid because we're scared of what's inside. And maybe opening them is the only way to finally breathe again. Her voice softened. I'm tired of carrying boxes. I nodded. So let's open them together. Eleanor reached for my hand again. Her grip was weak, but sure. There's more I need to tell you, she whispered. The part Anna never knew. The part that explains why I became the mother I was. She paused. It's about my childhood. And something I swore I'd never repeat, yet somehow did. Her voice broke. It's the story I never told anyone, not even Robert. She looked at me with pleading eyes. Daniel, if I tell you this, you must promise not to see me differently. I squeezed her hand gently. I promise. She took a breath so deep it shook her entire frame. Then let me tell you why I became the kind of mother I never wanted to be. For a moment, she didn't speak. She just held my hand, her fingers cold and trembling, her breathing shallow as if she were standing at the edge of a cliff, the edge of a memory she had spent a lifetime avoiding. Then she whispered, barely audible, my childhood was not what I let people believe. I waited, giving her the space she needed. I grew up in a small farmhouse, she said, but it wasn't the peaceful little dream I first mentioned. That was the part I wished had been true. The real story is much darker. She paused, her eyes drifting toward the window again, not looking at the parking lot, but into a past only she could see. My mother was gentle, she said, soft-spoken, loving. She taught school children during the day and read me stories at night. A faint smile appeared. She smelled like lavender and warm bread. And your father? I asked softly. The smile faded. My father was not a gentle man. She swallowed hard. He drank a lot. And when he drank, he yelled. And when yelling wasn't enough, he punished. I felt my stomach tighten. Punished how? I asked, quietly enough for her not to feel pressured. Words, she said. Always words. Sharp, cruel words. Words that could cut deeper than any belt. She took a shaky breath. He called me stupid, worthless, a burden, too emotional, too dramatic, too loud, too quiet. Whatever mood he was in, I was the problem. Her voice quivered. And the worst part was, I believed him. She closed her eyes. My mother tried to protect me, but she was small, quiet, afraid of making him angrier, so she shielded me with silence. I learned early that silence was safer than truth. A tear slipped down her cheek. One night, when I was 12, my father threw a plate across the room because dinner was late. I ran to my room and cried into my pillow. And my mother, her voice cracked. She came to me later and apologized for him. She said, "He loves you, Eleanor. He just doesn't know how to show it." She shook her head. That's the sentence that ruined me, Daniel. Because I grew up believing two things. Love hurts. Hurting someone means you still love them. I felt something twist deep in my chest, and when I became a mother, she whispered, "I swore I'd be different, but you weren't," I said gently. "No," she breathed, "I wasn't." She clasped her hands tightly, as if trying to hold herself together. "I tried so hard, Daniel. I really did." But every time I got overwhelmed, every time I felt scared or helpless, my father's voice came out of my throat, a beat, and Anna heard it. She heard the version of me that I inherited, the version I hated. Her voice grew smaller. I became the storm I spent my childhood hiding from. My heart hurt for her and for Anna, too. I never told her any of this, Eleanor continued. I didn't want her to know she had a broken mother. I wanted her to think I was strong. But instead, I passed the brokenness on to her. She tightened her grip on my hand. "Do you understand now, Daniel? The reason she left isn't only because I hurt her. It's because I reminded her of everything she never wanted to become." I let out a slow breath. "Eleanor, you survived something terrible, and you did your best with what you had." She gave a sad smile. "Surviving doesn't mean healing." Then, more quietly, "And I didn't heal. Not in time to save my daughter." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the fluorescent light above us filled the silence like a thin, trembling thread. Then she said, "I wanted Anna to grow up safe, but what she learned instead was fear. And when fear grows up, Daniel, it runs." I nodded. Yes, fear runs. But sometimes it also circles back. She looked at me, really looked for the first time since she began telling her story. "Do you truly believe that?" she whispered. "I do," I said. She inhaled shakily. "Then I want to tell her everything. Everything I told you. Everything I hid. Everything I never said. That's what the letter is for," I reminded her softly. She nodded, wiping her eyes. "But Daniel, what if she doesn't believe me? What if she thinks I'm making excuses? What if she reads my words and says, 'Too little, too late'?" Her voice broke on the last word. "What if the truth makes her hate me more?" I leaned forward. "Eleanor, the only thing worse than telling the truth late is never telling it at all." Her lips trembled. "And what if she never responds? Then you will still have spoken your heart. And silence can't be heavier than regret." She let out a breath that sounded like a sob and a prayer blended together. "Daniel, I'm so scared." "I know," I said, "but you're not alone." She clung to those words like they were the last warm thing in a cold world. "Will you help me write it?" she whispered. "The letter?" "Yes," I said, "as long as it takes." She nodded, slowly, gratefully. Then she said something that gutted me. "You're the first person in years who looked at me like I was still someone." "You are someone," I said quietly. "You're important." She closed her eyes, letting the words settle inside her like fragile medicine. "Tomorrow," she whispered, exhausted. "Tomorrow we start the letter." "Yes," I said softly, "tomorrow." She opened her eyes again, glassy with emotion. "Stay just a few more minutes?" "Of course." We sat together in silence, a healing silence, until she finally drifted into a fragile, trembling sleep. And I realized something as I watched her rest. In this lonely room, with its broken clock and empty table, I was no longer just a delivery driver, and she was no longer just a forgotten resident. We were two people who had found each other in the quietest corner of the world, and somehow saved each other a little. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because I regretted spending my afternoon in room high Chumway High. I didn't. Not because I was overwhelmed, though I was, but because for the first time in a long time, I found myself thinking about someone else's loneliness with a kind of urgency I couldn't shake. I kept seeing Eleanor's face, the way she looked at the window, hoping for a car that never came, the way she whispered her memories like they were fragile old letters she was afraid I might accidentally tear, and the way she said, "Tomorrow we start the letter." It echoed in my mind long after I got home. So the next morning, I woke up early, earlier than I needed to. I made coffee but barely drank it. Every passing minute felt strangely heavy, like I was keeping someone waiting. By Chinmamui, I had finished my deliveries earlier than usual. I didn't even realize I was rushing until I found myself turning onto Willow Road again. As I pulled into the empty parking lot of Greenfield Rest Home, I noticed something unusual. A car was parked in front, a silver sedan, clean, new, the kind of car someone buys when they want their life to look put together. I didn't think much of it until I walked inside. Laura, the nurse, looked up as I approached the desk. "Oh, Daniel." She blinked, surprised. "You're back early. I wanted to check on Miss Whitmore," I said. Her reaction was subtle, but I caught a flicker in her expression. Something cautious, something uncertain. "She's in her room," Laura said slowly, "but she has a visitor." My heart skipped. "A visitor?" I repeated. "Yes," Laura nodded. "Her daughter." I froze. "No," I said automatically. "No, that's impossible," Eleanor said. "I know," Laura said gently. "No one's come for months, but her daughter showed up 15 minutes ago." I swallowed hard. "Do you know why she came?" Laura hesitated. "I don't, but she asked for privacy." My pulse thudded in my ears. Part of me wanted to walk away. Part of me wanted to stay out of something so deeply personal. But another part, the part that had listened to Eleanor's pain for hours, felt a knot of dread tightening in my chest. "I'll wait in the hallway," I said quietly. Laura nodded. I walked down the long corridor toward room Hai Chumwee Hai, feeling each step like I was walking into a storm. As I approached the door, I slowed. It was slightly open, not wide enough to see inside, but enough for sound to slip through. And so I heard her voice first. Not Eleanor's, her daughter's. A sharp, authoritative voice, controlled, polished, but carrying an undercurrent of frustration. "Mom, you can't just pause. No, listen to me. This isn't fair." My chest tightened. Then I heard Eleanor's voice, soft, fragile. Nothing like the woman who had bravely told me her past the day before. "Anna, please, I just want—" "You want what?" Her daughter snapped, not loudly, but harshly enough that it felt louder. "Do you know how difficult my life has been because of you?" I clenched my fists. This wasn't the reunion Eleanor had imagined. This wasn't healing. This wasn't even a conversation. This was a wound being reopened with salt. "Anna," Eleanor pleaded, "I only—" "No." Her daughter cut her off. "I came because the nursing home called me. They said you're behind on payments." Again, a silence fell. A heavy, suffocating silence. Eleanor's voice came next, trembling. "I didn't ask them to call you." "I know you didn't," Anna said sharply. "You never ask. You just sit here. You wait. You let everything fall apart and expect someone else to fix it." I felt heat rise up my neck. That wasn't fair. That wasn't true. That wasn't even remotely close to the woman I had spoken with. Eleanor whispered something I barely caught. "I only wanted to see you." A pause. Then Anna said coldly, "Mom, we don't have that kind of relationship anymore." Something in me snapped, a protective instinct I didn't know I possessed. I stepped forward without thinking and knocked on the door. There was a sudden silence inside. Then, "Come in," Eleanor whispered. I pushed the door open gently. Eleanor sat on the edge of her bed, her eyes red, though she had tried to hide it. Next to her stood a tall woman in her 30s, sharply dressed, expression tight, carefully controlled. Anna. She turned toward me, startled, then annoyed. "Who are you?" she demanded. "I'm Daniel," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I came to check on her." "We're in the middle of a private conversation," Anna said coldly. "Anna," Eleanor whispered, embarrassed. "It's all right. He's a friend. A friend." The word made something tighten painfully in my chest. Anna crossed her arms. "A friend!" "Mom, you've been here for 2 years. You don't have friends here." I stepped closer. With respect, I said quietly, "She does." Anna's jaw tensed. "Well," she said sharply, "that's good, because she clearly needs someone." I'm too busy holding my life together to babysit her emotional breakdowns. Eleanor flinched, physically flinched like a wounded animal. That was it. I couldn't be silent. You know, I said, trying desperately to stay respectful, but failing. Your mother deserves more compassion than this. Anna's eyes burned into me. You have no idea what she deserves, she said. You don't know what she was like. You don't know what I lived through. No, I said, I don't, but I know what she's living through now, and she's living through it alone. The room went dead silent. Eleanor whispered, Daniel, please. But Anna wasn't done. You think you understand? She hissed. She told you some sad story about being lonely, and now you think she's a saint? You have no idea the damage she caused. Eleanor let out a quiet, strangled sound. I know, she whispered. I know the damage. Anna didn't even look at her. I'm raising my own children now, she said, and I refuse, absolutely refuse to repeat what she did to me. Her voice rose, finally cracking. I can't love her the way she wants. I can't. Because every time I try, I turn back into that terrified little girl. And suddenly, I understood everything. Both sides, both wounds, both versions of the truth. Anna wasn't cruel. She was shattered. Eleanor wasn't a monster. She was broken. They were both bleeding from the same old wound, but bleeding in different directions. And I was standing in the middle of the storm when no one else spoke. I finally said, maybe neither of you knows how to love each other anymore. But maybe today can be the first day you try. They both looked at me, one full of anger, one full of hope, both full of pain. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Anna said quietly, I didn't come here to fix anything. I came to sign paperwork. What paperwork? I asked. She looked at Eleanor. Transfer papers, Anna whispered, voice breaking. They want to move me to the low care ward. My heart dropped, and Anna said nothing, absolutely nothing. For a moment, the entire room froze as if time itself held its breath. Transfer papers, the words hit me like a punch. I had heard about the low care ward. Everyone at Greenfield knew what it meant. Smaller rooms, less staff, less attention, less dignity, a place for the forgotten. And Eleanor, she wasn't forgotten because she chose to be. She was forgotten because someone else decided she no longer belonged anywhere else. I turned slowly toward Anna. Is that true? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. She just looked down at her handbag, tightening her grip on it, like she wanted to crush the leather between her fingers. Then she said quietly, the nursing home contacted me. They said my mother's account is overdue. They said she no longer qualifies for her current level of care. They need my signature to move her. She said it calmly, professionally, as if she were reading a memo at work. But Eleanor reacted as if struck. Anna, she whispered, her voice shaking, please, don't do this. Not yet, please. Anna didn't look at her. I didn't come here to hurt you, Mom, she muttered. I came because I had to. You don't have to, Eleanor cried softly. You could fight it. You could. You could help me. Anna exhaled sharply, her composure cracking for the first time. I can't, she snapped. I have 2 kids, a mortgage, a job that barely gives me time to breathe. I'm doing everything alone. I can't add this to my life. Her voice shook. You're asking too much. Eleanor covered her mouth with both hands, a gesture of someone trying to hold in her own breaking. I'm asking, she breathed, not to be thrown away. Those words cut through me like a blade. Anna stiffened. I'm not throwing you away. But her voice was too thin, too brittle, too hollow. I stepped forward, unable to stay silent. Anna, your mother still needs you. Anna's eyes flashed. You don't understand. You heard one side of the story, one day of her life. I lived 18 years of it. Then tell me, I said calmly. Tell her. Tell someone what hurt you so much. Because right now, she thinks she deserves this. Maybe she does, Anna hissed. Eleanor flinched as if the words were physical blows. My jaw tightened. No one, I said, deserves to be abandoned. Anna turned to me, eyes burning. You don't know what it was like, she repeated, teeth clenched. You didn't live in that house. You didn't jump every time a door slammed. You didn't spend your childhood afraid of saying the wrong thing. Her breath trembled violently. You didn't grow up feeling like your mother loved you and hated you in the same breath. I opened my mouth and closed it, because in that instant, I realized something painful and profound. They were both telling the truth. Two versions of the same story, two sides of the same broken coin. Eleanor whispered, "Anna, I'm so sorry. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was real, raw." Anna froze mid-breath. "I'm sorry," Eleanor repeated, tears spilling freely now, for the yelling, for the fear. "For every time I made you feel small, for every night you cried because of me." She reached out with shaking fingers. "I never wanted to be like him." Anna's shoulders tensed. "Like who?" Eleanor lowered her hand. "Your grandfather." The room went still. Anna blinked. "Grandfather?" "Mom, I never met him." "No," Eleanor whispered. "I never let you. I didn't want you anywhere near him." Anna's expression shifted confusion, mixing with fear. "What did he do?" Eleanor's voice broke. "He broke me," she whispered. "And I didn't know how to stop myself from breaking you." Tears welled in Anna's eyes. It was the first time her face softened. Not forgiveness, not understanding, but recognition. The kind you see when an old truth finally cracks open and a long silent scream escapes. Anna's voice wavered. "You never told me." "I was ashamed," Eleanor said. "I thought protecting you meant hiding everything, but hiding my pain didn't stop me from passing it on." Silence swallowed the room, heavy, slow, suffocating. I could almost feel the weight of years pressing down on both of them. Then, very softly, Anna said, "I didn't come here because of the bill." She swallowed. "I came because they said you've been asking for me." Eleanor's lips parted. "I didn't want anything from you," she murmured. "Only to see your face again." Anna looked away. "I wasn't ready." "For what?" Eleanor whispered. "To see what time did to you." Anna's voice trembled. "To see how old you've gotten. To see that you're alone." "I didn't want to feel guilty." Eleanor's breath hitched. "You don't have to feel guilty," she said. "Not anymore." Anna's composure cracked. "I do," she whispered, "because I left. I walked away. And part of me," she closed her eyes in shame, "part of me was glad when you stopped calling." Eleanor sobbed quietly. And then, for the first time, Anna finally looked at her mother. "Mom," she said, voice breaking, "I didn't come to move you to a low-care ward." Eleanor looked up, startled. "You? You didn't?" "No," Anna whispered. "I came to sign the papers so you wouldn't be moved." Eleanor gasped. I felt my breath catch too. "I didn't want them to send you somewhere worse," Anna said through tears. "I didn't want that for you." Eleanor stared, stunned. Then she whispered, "Then why? Why were you so angry just now?" Anna wiped her face fiercely. "Because being here terrifies me. Because seeing you like this terrifies me. Because every time I try to come back into your life, I remember how much it hurt to be in it." She took a shuddering breath. "But I didn't come here to throw you away." Anna looked directly at her mother. "I came because I didn't want to lose you." Eleanor covered her face with both hands and cried, not the quiet, resigned crying of yesterday, but something deeper, fuller, like a storm breaking after years of drought. And I realized this was the moment she had been waiting half a decade for. Not forgiveness, not repair, just truth. And truth finally was in the room. Eleanor cried into her palms while Anna stood stiffly beside her, frozen in that strange space between regret and fear, between wanting to comfort and wanting to run. For a moment, the distance between them felt impossible to cross. Two lives, two stories, two hurts stretching across decades. But slowly, painfully, Anna moved. She knelt beside her mother's bed, not touching her yet, but close enough for her breath to tremble in the air between them. "Mom," she whispered, "please look at me." Eleanor lowered her hands. Her face was soaked with tears. She looked smaller than ever fragile in a way that made my chest ache. Anna swallowed hard. "I wasn't honest with you," she said softly, "about why I stayed away." Eleanor wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "You were protecting yourself. I understand." "No," Anna whispered. "That's only part of it." She squeezed her hands together, knuckles whitening. "I stayed away because every time I walked into this place, I heard your voice from years ago. I heard the yelling. I heard my own crying. I felt like that little girl again. Her voice trembled, and I hated that feeling." Eleanor closed her eyes, not in anger, but in mourning. I never wanted you to feel small, she said, voice breaking, but I did. Anna's tone wasn't cruel, it was simply honest. And as I grew older, I kept thinking, maybe if I stayed away, I could finally feel bigger. She looked down, but I never did. Eleanor whispered, Anna, I'm so sorry. The younger woman let out a shaky breath, a breath that sounded like she'd been holding it for half her life. Mom, do you know what the hardest part was? She asked. It wasn't the yelling, it wasn't the fear. It wasn't even the night I left. She looked up. The hardest part was knowing you loved me and still hurting anyway. A tear slid down Eleanor's cheek. Anna's voice softened. Because I loved you too, even when it hurt. Something shifted in the room, something small but fundamental, like a curtain that had been drawn for years, finally letting in a thin line of light. I'm not asking you to forgive me, Eleanor whispered. I don't deserve it. Anna shook her head. That's not how forgiveness works. Eleanor blinked. Then, how does it work? Anna exhaled slowly. It works when two people stop pretending they weren't both hurting. Eleanor looked stunned, as if the words were too new, too unfamiliar, too gentle to process. Then Anna said something that surprised both of us. I read your old letters, you know. Eleanor's eyes widened. My letters? The ones you sent after I moved out. I kept them. Her voice cracked. I couldn't answer them, but I kept them. Eleanor pressed a hand to her chest. Oh my God, I thought you threw them away. No, Anna whispered. I couldn't face them yet. The air thickened with emotion, sadness, longing, grief, something like love struggling to breathe again. I felt like an intruder in something sacred, but neither of them asked me to leave. In fact, they seemed to draw strength from knowing someone else was witnessing the truth, the whole truth finally being spoken aloud. Anna stood up slowly and walked to the window. She looked out over the empty parking lot, arms wrapped around herself. I drove here yesterday, she said. I sat in my car for almost 20 minutes. I thought about turning around. Why didn't you? I asked softly. Anna hesitated. Because I had a dream. She turned back to us. In the dream, Mom was standing by a window, just like this one, and she was calling my name over and over. But I couldn't get to her. Every door I opened led to another hallway. Every hallway led to another locked door. She pressed a trembling hand to her forehead. And for the first time, I realized something. What? Eleanor whispered. That my fear of coming back was smaller than my fear of losing you. Eleanor began sobbing again quietly, helplessly, like someone whose heart had been locked away for years and had just been handed the key. Anna went to her mother and sat beside her on the bed. This time she didn't hesitate. She reached out, very slowly, very carefully, very humanly. She took her mother's hand. Eleanor stared at their joined fingers as if afraid it was an illusion. I don't know how to fix everything, Anna murmured. I don't even know where to start. Eleanor squeezed her hand weakly. Maybe we start with today. Anna nodded, tears running freely down her face now. Today, she whispered. That's enough. I felt emotion rising in my throat thick, unexpected. I wasn't part of their story. I wasn't blood. I wasn't family. But I had walked into the room where two broken hearts were finally trying to speak the same language again. And for the first time, it felt like healing. Not perfect, not complete, but possible. Anna took a shaky breath. There's something else, she said. Eleanor turned to her. Anna continued, voice low. I don't want you moved to the low care ward. I know you think I don't care, but I came here to sign the papers to stop it. Eleanor gasped. You did? Yes, Anna whispered. I didn't want you to be alone. Not like that. A long silence hung between them, filled with something close to hope. Then Eleanor whispered, Anna, would you sit with me tomorrow, just for a little while? Anna hesitated. Not out of cruelty, but fear. Then she nodded. Yes, Mom, I can do that. Eleanor's face softened not into joy, but into a kind of fragile peace that looked like a miracle. I finally spoke. I'm proud of both of you. They looked at me, surprised I was still there, surprised maybe that they hadn't pushed me away. Anna spoke first. Thank you for being here. She struggled with the next words. Thank you for caring about her. Eleanor reached out, touched my arm. You saved me, she whispered. You saved my story. I shook my head. No, I said quietly. You saved each other. But in my heart, I knew that wasn't entirely true. Because something told me the hardest part was still ahead, and tomorrow, the letter still had to be written. The next morning, I felt different. Maybe it was hope, maybe it was fear. Maybe it was the quiet knowing that something sacred had unfolded in room Hai Chumway High, and I was walking back into the aftershocks. I drove to Greenfield Rest Home slower than usual. The sky was overcast, the kind of gray that looks soft rather than sad. It felt fitting, like the world knew today needed quiet. When I walked inside, Laura smiled gently at me. She's been asking about you, she said. I nodded, grateful, and made my way down the hallway. When I reached room Hai Chumway High, the door was pushed open just a crack, exactly like the first day I met her. I knocked softly. Eleanor? It's Daniel, her voice floated out. Come in. I stepped inside. She was sitting up in bed, dressed in a simple floral blouse that looked a little too big for her frail frame. But she smiled when she saw me, a real smile. Small, but real. You came, she whispered. Of course, I said. And then something unexpected. Anna was there too, sitting by the window, hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee. She didn't look uncomfortable. She didn't look angry, just present. She gave me a small, cautious nod. Hi, she said. I nodded back. Good morning. Eleanor looked between us, two people who had been strangers 2 days ago, now bound together in her story. I told her you were coming, she said softly. I told her we planned to write the letter today. Anna exhaled slowly. Mom, I'm here because I want to hear it too. Whatever you need to say. A shadow of fear crossed Eleanor's face, but also determination. I pulled a chair closer. Are you ready? I asked. She took a long breath. Yes. I set a notebook on the little tray table beside her. She placed her trembling hands on her lap. Before we start, she said, I want to say something that isn't for the letter, something just for Anna. Her daughter looked up. Eleanor turned her body slightly, facing Anna fully. Sweetheart, I want you to know that nothing I say today is to ask for forgiveness. I know forgiveness isn't a fruit we can simply pick from a tree. This isn't about absolution. This is about truth. About finally opening the boxes. Anna nodded, her eyes already wet. Okay, she whispered. Eleanor reached out slowly, tentatively. Anna took her hand, and then Eleanor began. Anna, she said, her voice trembling, I was wrong in so many ways. I was young, hurt, and scared. I was carrying wounds I didn't understand, and instead of healing them, I passed them on to you. She swallowed. I didn't mean to yell at you. I didn't mean to make you afraid. I didn't mean to make you feel small, but those intentions didn't matter because the hurt was still real. Her grip tightened, and I am sorry. Anna's face crumpled. Mom, but Eleanor continued, I never told you about my father. I never wanted you to see the ugliness of where I came from. I thought if I hid the darkness, it would disappear. But secrets grow in the dark, and they grew inside me. Her voice broke. I became the mother I swore I'd never be. Anna wiped her tears, shaking her head. You weren't a monster, Mom. No, Eleanor whispered, but I wasn't gentle, and every child deserves gentleness. Anna let out a shaky breath. I was angry for so long. Angry at you, angry at myself, angry at everything. I know, Eleanor whispered. I felt it every time you pulled away. They held each other's gaze, two lives finally painfully aligning, and I realized this wasn't a letter anymore. This was healing, slow, raw, uneven, but real. After a long silence, Eleanor turned back to me. Daniel, she said softly, may we write the letter now? I nodded and set pen to paper. She dictated slowly, haltingly, choosing each word with the tenderness of someone touching an old wound. The letter wasn't dramatic, it wasn't poetic, it wasn't perfect, it was honest. When she finished, Anna asked quietly, may I read it? Eleanor handed it to her with trembling fingers. Anna read it through once, then twice. Then she pressed it against her chest and broke, not the sharp, angry tears of yesterday, but the soft, surrendering tears of someone finally letting go of something heavy. She leaned forward and rested her forehead on her mother's. "I hear you," she whispered, and I needed to. Eleanor closed her eyes, overwhelmed. 9 words had just rewritten decades. After a while, Anna stood. "I need to pick up the kids," she said gently, "but I'll come tomorrow, for real this time." Eleanor nodded, her smile trembling. "I would like that." Anna kissed her mother's forehead, an unfamiliar gesture between them. Then she turned to me. "Thank you," she said, "for being here, for helping her, for everything." I nodded. It was an honor. When she left, the room felt warm in a way it never had before. Eleanor looked at me with tears in her eyes. "You were right," she whispered. "Sometimes one person just needs to take the first step. And sometimes," I said gently, "they just need someone to walk beside them while they take it." She smiled, not sad this time, soft, peaceful. "Daniel, I'm not afraid of being forgotten anymore." I swallowed. "I'm glad." She squeezed my hand one last time. "And thank you for remembering my name." I stayed until she drifted into sleep, breathing softly, peacefully, as if a lifetime of weight had finally loosened its grip. Then I slipped out quietly, leaving the door cracked open behind me, just the way it had been the day I met her. And that, my friends, is the story of Eleanor and Anna. A story about memory, about the wounds we carry, and about something stronger than fear itself, the courage to finally speak the truth. Maybe as you listened, someone from your own life came to mind, someone you once hurt, or someone you silently hoped would walk back through your door. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever been in Anna's shoes, or have you ever felt like Eleanor, waiting for someone who never came? Share your feelings in the comments below. You never know, your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you enjoy true, heartfelt stories like this one, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next episode of Kitchen Table Talks. Thank you for sitting with us around this little kitchen table. We'll see you in the next story.